slave land of Jamestown. It's not a white phenomenon. Now, I just want to be clear, by the way, in my life, in the whole of my life, in all the spaces that I've been in, I have never once heard anybody say that white people invented slavery. Conservatives are always saying, all the time they're saying this. They're saying, they want you to believe that white people invented slavery. Or they sort of imply other people are making that point by saying that white people didn't invent slavery. Who said that? They all came from Africa. I'm sure there were slaves 40,000 years ago. I don't think white people invented that. Anyway, as always, a fun disclaimer to all the fine people watching who don't understand my positions from the get-go, and is that I don't think white people should feel guilty for slavery, because I don't think people should feel guilty for things that they didn't or didn't do. Stuff they're not responsible for. However, we should know about slavery, and we should be aware of the effect it's had on the modern world, and we should be willing to address the inequalities it produced with government policy today. Let's see.
And now for a brief.
And of course, because this is a PragerU video on a race subject, we bring out a black conservative, which they do every single time. Despite conservatives always saying that, this liberal identity politics is counterproductive, they will do this relentlessly every time. All right, Candace, let's go.
Brief history of slavery. Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people.
Wow. Again, the first point. I have never in my life heard anybody say that. I have never heard that said from anyone. Not in media, not in my classroom. I'm sure somebody somewhere has said it. I don't doubt in all of human society anyone has said it. But I think they all just so obsessed with making sure their audience thinks that we think that.
It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown.
We know.
It existed before then.
Yes.
It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World.
No one
in fact,
believes this.
When the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner. Slavery existed in...
Now wait, quick follow-up question. How'd that work out with Columbus? You've given us that little historical window view. How did Columbus end up helping the native people? Is that what happened? Actually, Christopher Columbus was such a barbaric monster that he was censured in his own time, even by the standards of people hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They thought that Columbus's behavior was monstrous. Columbus was criticized for his alleged brutality and initiated the depopulation of the indigenous Americans, whether by disease or intentional genocide. Criticized Columbus for initiating colonization for his abuse of natives. Columbus's friend Miguel de Cunha kept an indigenous woman he captured whom Columbus gave to him and brutally raped her. The punishment for an indigenous person failing to fill their hot spell of gold dust every 3 months was cutting off the hands of those who had tokens, letting them bleed to death. Thousands of natives are thought to have committed suicide by poison to escape their persecution. Now, thousands committing suicide to escape means hundreds of thousands enslaved, okay? Those are not favorable numbers to our great founder here. Columbus had an economic interest in the enslavement of those natives, etc., etc. Even those who loved him had to admit the atrocities that had taken place. Debate over whether it's appropriate to use the term genocide in modern context. Other historians argue that while brutal, Columbus was simply a product of his time. Well, that's the case of the Still others openly defend colonization. That's the PragerU point there. Let's see. Around the turn of the 21st century, estimates for the pre-Columbian population of Hispaniola range from between 250,000 and 2 million, but genetic analysis suggests it may have been as low as 10 to 50,000. Based on the previous figures of the 1,000.
Much better shit.
Okay. Whenever you're looking over records like this, one of the issues with records of Columbus is that not only did they come from hundreds of years ago, but they also were being done in the New World. which meant that it was difficult to get multiple perspectives of what was taking place over there, you know? Like, the people who were writing on what Columbus were doing were often part of Columbus's crew. It's not like this was all taking place in a big city where dozens or hundreds of academics and historians would analyze everything taking place. Is the native cannibalism part even true? Records of cannibalization among indigenous people have always been exaggerated by sort of imperialist Westerners as a means of justifying their enslavement and colonization. As for the specific group mentioned by Craig or you, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that like a group did that, but it wasn't exactly common. It was frequently talked about and infrequently done. The indigenous population in the Americas overall thought to be reduced by about 90% in the century after Columbus's arrival. That would have been disease. Yikes! Pretty problematic, I would say. Does anyone else feel like Columbus might be a little bit of a problematic fave? I don't know about that one. Anyway, he still, you know, came on over here and laid the seeds for this country. But again, remember how Charlie Kirk said the purpose of education was to be thankful for your country? This is what that looks like, by the way. Ignore, overwrite, or lie about history so that you can never be critical about the heroes and leaders who started.
In Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later by the Ottoman Turks.
Hold on, I feel like I need to fact check part of this. The oldest written history of Slavs were semi-Iberians and slaves. The Slav was comprised of goods as a whole was diverse routes. The Arabian Java was 900 Magyars often stepped up and they had Slavs Magyars and great Slavs were on the place there where the Byzantines for highs of such wares in exchange. Damn! That's pretty good. Gosh, it's a whole lot for racial slur. I don't know, but it's okay to say about it. I forgive.
Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean and most of Europe in the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great.
They are literally dedicating over a minute of this video just to say white people didn't invent slavery. This is literally, we're over a minute in and we're still attempting to disprove a point that nobody believes.
Conquered Persia in the 4th century BC. It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural.
Yeah.
The slave master model was just how the world operated in the great philosopher's day. Slavery existed during the time of the
Oh my God!
5,000 years ago.
Holy shit! Nobody believes white people invented something. Is this going to be the whole video? Can we just keep going like further and further back one at a time? You know? Yeah, slavery is mentioned in the Bible. That's correct. It's in the Bible. We know.
As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery.
Yes.
As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as a third of the population of the ancient world was enslaved.
Okay.
Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
Now that is not true at all, depending on how wide your definition of white people is. Let's take a look. Worldwide abolition of slavery. Let's see. Were there like societies thousands of years ago that had slavery? Hold on. And also depending on whether you consider certain slaves. We have to talk more about that, yeah, because what type of slavery there is changes significantly. Cyrus the Great, the first king of ancient Persia, was 539 BC. Conquered the city of Babylon, but it was his next action that marked a major advance in man. He freed the slaves, declared that all people had the right to choose their own religion, and established racial equality. Only just establish it? Yeah, that was that easy. Slap that shit down. Well, that was before Christ died, you know. So that was a little while ago. You know. I think one of the technical difficulties we're going to have here is that the term abolition of slavery is going to hinge on the legal systems in which they took place, you know? So while it's possible that ancient kings and emperors may have abolished slavery in their own time, civilizations have changed since then, and laws may have changed, and so on. Here's a wiki article on the timeline of the abolition of slavery, starting in ancient times.
Should I?
In the early 6th century BC, Athenian lawgiver Solon abolishes debt slavery of Athenian citizens and removes all Athenian citizens who had formerly been enslaved. That's nice. The chattel slavery continued. That's not nice. The Indian Emperor Ashoka abolishes the slave trade and encourages people to free slaves well. If you abolish the slave trade, so does that just mean like you can't trade them anymore, but you just have what you have, I guess? So sort of putting a freeze on the commercial. That's kind of an odd half step there, but okay. Lex Portia Imperia abolishes nexus contracts in form of pledging debt bondage of poor Roman citizens to wealthy creditors as security for loans. Chattel slavery was not abolished. So I see a tendency here. The tendency we're looking at here is that certain types of slavery are abolished, but chattel slavery remains. Probably because chattel slaves were of a lower social caste, whereas the slaves that were freed were like dead slaves, essentially indentured servants, I suppose, would be the most accurate relative term, I guess. Measures by the emperor of the Qing dynasty to eliminate the landowning aristocracy included the abolition of slavery and the establishment of a free peasantry. That's pretty cool. Though later there was revolt, many of the laws were overturned. It's Qin. This is Qin. Oh, I never knew that. Interesting. Qin? Qin? Yeah? Okay. Dynasty. Wan Man. First and only emperor of that dynasty. Qin. Okay, Qin usurped the Chinese throne and instituted a series of sweeping reforms, including the abolition of slavery. However, this turned many popular and elite sentiments against them, and slavery was reintroduced after he was killed by an angry mob. Damn, dude, it looks like non-white people were so committed to the abolition of slavery that they would do so even when it led to public sentiment being turned against them and then being killed by an angry mob. That's pretty wild. Pope Gregory I bans Jews from owning Christian slaves. Something tells me this has more to do with anti-Semitism than it does anti-slavery. I have a feeling this isn't really about the slavery thing. Oh God. And it looks like we have some measures from Rome to prevent the sale of Christian slaves by other religious groups. Pope John the 8th declares the enslavement of fellow Christians a sin and demands their release. That's nice. Prohibits voluntary self-enslavement. Tondo was the first pre-colonial Philippine state to abolish slavery. Well, that's nice. Slaves were freed on a large scale in 956 by the Goryeo dynasty. Well, that's also very nice. Slave trade was banned in the city under World War III again for the fourth Antiano. William the Conqueror prohibited the sale of any person to heathens as slaves. Okay, so again, we have the sort of Christian favoritism a little bit there. All of the slaves in the island. There are a lot of ethnic and religious preferentials. Statutes of the town abolished slavery. Mercenarians founded in Barcelona with the purpose of ransom for Christians. Enslaved by Muslims. Also banning Jews from owning Christian slaves. It seems to go on for quite a while. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that this sentiment right here, white people were the first who were formally put into slavery, is wrong for several reasons. The first is that depending on your definition of slavery, we didn't abolish it. So there is still slavery in the United States today. We still have prisons which deprive people of their freedoms, and in which people are selectively or disproportionately imprisoned, and their labor is sold for pennies on the dollar. And we still have sharecropping immediately after the end of slavery, which replicated all of the economic and social systems of slavery with the near and freedom capture. Additionally, if you go ahead and look at history, or even just Wikipedia, you will find that centuries and millennia We would now call the white abolition of slavery, saw many other societies also abolishing slavery. So, yeah, pretty much wrong at every level here.
In 1833, Britain was the first.
Notice how everything we talked about was century before.
Country in the history of the world to pass the Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies. And of course, the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution.
After a multi-year civil war in which the people fighting against the implementation of this amendment had a flag that is still flown and celebrated live in innocent civilians. Keep in mind, the 13th Amendment didn't just happen. We had to kill some people first. And today those people are honored fairly exclusively by Candace Owens.
After centuries of
This isn't true. Haiti abolished slavery in 1804. Man, is that true? Man, white people can't do anything. Oh, look at that. Here's an article called Haiti was the first nation to permanently ban slavery. I don't think that Haiti was full of white people. I think they killed all the white people, actually. And then all the remaining non-white people abolished slavery. Oh, look at that. They found a solution. Oh yeah, okay, we're wrong on like every conceivable and imaginable level. But it isn't surprising to me that Prager would. I like this. Prager's argument here essentially is one, you can't expect white people to feel guilty for stuff their ancestors did, which is true, but then they follow it up with two, but white people should be proud that their race was the first to fix and end slavery. You know?
White men led the world in putting an end to the foreign practice. That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War.
You can't take credit for the Union soldiers when you would have supported the Confederacy. Who were they fighting? White men. What do you mean? Yeah, dude, the heroic. I bet. Is the implication that the Confederates were black? Like, the Union soldiers are across the meadow and they're like, let's free you! You're a human being! All races are equal! And then over in the South, the Confederate side, there are black guys like, no, we like slavery. No, we like this life. You know? Yeah, come on, take our slavery. Yeah. Like, what's the implication? What's going on?
War. Am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not.
I want to see the writing on the chat after that one. Thank you.
My purpose here is to simply tell the truth and the truth is that human history is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless.
No, wait. I thought we were all guiltless. Wait, I thought we didn't have any guilt because this all happened from times that we weren't alive for. What? What if you can't oscillate between these points? I'm consistent. I don't think white people should feel guilty for slaves. Just understand the history and acknowledge what it does to the modern world. No, I don't feel guilty.
Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or
Oh my God.
cannibalism of indigenous tribes.
Okay, no, she's full on doing the like, oh yeah, the natives were savages. Okay, yeah. The murderous Persian. Hey, remember the Persian emperor who banned slavery 500 years before the death of Christ?
North and South America, or that led his actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires.
We aren't taught world history. Okay, first of all, again, nobody is told that only white people did slavery. And second of all, Americans aren't taught world history. If you want to do this history course, then go for it. You're the one who's coming to us in charge of the Department of Education. Okay, that's on you. Okay, yeah, teach us better history. Okay, I would love it if Americans could learn a little bit more about countries around the world.
So, just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is an right and not a right.
Literally nobody, please, I'm begging you guys, in chat, haven't any of you heard this? I have literally never heard this. When conservatives say other people are saying this, I never hear this. This is one of those points that I hear so rarely that I don't even think I've seen it from the people on the left, like trying to discontinue something. Like, I don't I genuinely don't know where this comes from. Now, the only way in which you can say slavery is a white phenomenon is if you're exclusively referring to America, in which case, yes, in America, it was mostly white people owning black people. Yes, that is true. But worldwide, I have just never been able to prove this. And I like, by the way, how this is a short history of slavery. We have not learned a single thing about it. The entire goal of this movement is to say, very interesting. Well, white people aren't that bad. Which, like, you're kind of telling yourself a little bit. Maybe the white male decided to conservatives all along.
And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies.
Yeah.
On social media, I come across extraordinary pictures about how Africans lived like pharaohs before.
Oh God, and someone's found Hotep Twitter. Oh no. And someone's found one Photoshop of a black guy in one of those pharaoh headdresses, and now we're gonna get a whole bad.
No, kids can't even leave waste in paradise. I wish any of this were true, but it's not. It's innocent. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other black Africans.
So this is a half truth. Okay. So let me explain to you guys how slavery has happened all over the world for the most part. Okay. There are two basic kinds of acquisitions of slaves. Okay. There are two basic ways. Okay. In one half, you do what's happening here, which is that you buy them from slave owners. And in the other half, you conquer entire populations and enslave those people. Those are basically the two ways you acquire slaves. You purchase them, or you conquer their lands and take them as slaves. Both of these happen from Western powers in Africa. However, the majority was the former. Do you know why? It's not because the Europeans were civilized. It's not because they were, beneficent merchants simply looking to trade the wares of the African upper castes who were selling slaves. It's because, for the most part, the logistics of acquiring slaves are much easier with buying them than conquering lands. Conquering land means you have to send armies. You have to kill many people and suffer your own fate as well. So you take those who survive, enslave them, and send them back, knowing full well that up until the moment they capture those slaves will be free men. That's a very tough thing to get millions of people from. Whereas people simply buy slaves, oftentimes these men have been slaves for a while. There's a pre-existing standard of, and this sounds a little bit good, but this is true, slave quality, where the merchant selling the slave can be held to account for the physical health of the slave to purchase it. The overall system is just way easier to manage if you're buying them as opposed to conquering territory. This is something that a lot of conservatives will often look into, is that like the African nations sold out their own people and the Europeans were civilized citizens. This is not true. This is just how slavery has worked. That's the implication Greg gave us as well. That, we didn't conquer them and destroy their empires, we just purchased at their cost, which that's how slavery works. That's how it works. Now, are white people exclusively related to this? No. The black African merchants who enslaved their own people were also very, very bad. And largely, this is the product of international and intertribal conflicts in Africa. It's not like the slave-owning Africans were just like going to the nearest village that they grew up in and just like rounding up people. Usually, there were conflicts amidst their own groups, their own tribes, their own nations, their own communities, the outcome of which produced slaves. And if you are fighting with another African tribe, which produces more wealth for your own tribe, killing everyone you come across, or enslaving the ones you capture and so I mean, obviously the latter, right? And there are Europeans there that are happy, ready, and willing to buy. So anyway, there's a lot of more people in chat are pointing out, the majority of slaves were owned by people with different ethnic culture. Like, it's not like there's one Africa. There's like many different groups in Africa, always fighting just as Europeans have, and Europeans did the same thing. You think there weren't more slaves in the wars between European countries? Of course there were. The thing that made the transatlantic slave trade so unique was the fact that Europe, in its global imperial expansion, produced an unprecedentedly large market for slavery. The Europeans produced a tremendous demand, an unprecedented demand. And because we were expanding our reach globally, it was a demand that we could have sated by entire other continents' population. So the mechanics and logistics of this were very different. But yeah, I would get it.
In many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors. Whites didn't go.
I like how in many cases, as though this wasn't like a massive profitable enterprise. I like how the implication here is that white people were able to promote and express the backward Africans by showing them like little toy dolls or something. No, Europeans came with a buck ton of gold. Okay? Yeah, also mirrors are expensive luxury items back then. But no, for the most part, it was an overwhelming amount of money that they bought the slaves for. That's what happened. They don't focus on that because they want to make the Africans look as backward as possible.
Owned the interior and round up the units. They weeded out the coast with black partners to bring them black bodies. The stark reality is that our lives have very little value to our ancestors. Here's the third thing you need to know.
So the first thing you need to know about slavery is that white people weren't the only ones who did it. The second thing you need to learn about slavery is that Black Africans also deported slaves. We're learning so much today. It's curious how everything we're learning seems designed to absolve the guilty feelings of white conservatives who want to make sure that not only does slavery have no effect in the modern world, but also that, what are we going to get to here, that actually it's black people's fault? This is the bottom line perspective.
No. If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today.
How many imprisoned people are there in America? Just out of curiosity. 2.12 million people were incarcerated in the U.S. in 2020. Damn, we're tripling this number in one country as opposed to the population of the whole continent. That's pretty crazy. Now, of course, not every imprisoned American will be called a slave, but they are a part of the economic bloc that is used for modern slave labor. And again, Africa is a continent. What's the population of Africa? America is about 320 million, right? Africa is 1.2 billion. It's not the same thing, like not even close, but I think your point. That's completely true. Slaves in Africa are going to have way worse living conditions. However, given the fact that the goal of this video that we're watching right now is to do everything in its power to reaffirm white and American supremacy and to ignore all of the circumstances which sort of implicate the American government for the propagation of slavery as it existed. This number is extremely unimpressive compared to the goal of whitewashing history. I would much rather be a prisoner in America than a slave over in Africa, but I am entirely unconvinced by the arguments of a person who would even acknowledge that what we have here in America is a modern form of slavery. You understand what I'm saying? The Global Slavery Index 2018 estimates that on any given day in 2016, there were 403,000 people living in conditions of modern slavery in the United States, a prevalence of 1.3 victims of modern slavery for every 1,000 in the country. Holy shit. So per capita, that's more than the number listed here in Africa. The Global Slavery Index 2018. Oh, hold on. Yep, there's that line right at the beginning. 403,000 people living in conditions of modern slavery in the United States. We're not just talking prisoners either. There's also asylum detainees, immigrants, people in transitive, military, political, immigrants, sex trafficking as well. Yeah, for sure. Yikes. Forced labor, state-imposed forced labor. While the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution provides that slavery and involuntary servitude can be used as punishment for a crime. That's pretty bad. Anyway, the goal of all of this is not to say that, America In Africa, it's about 9.2 million, by the way. So their standards would be wider than what Candace Owens is using here. Yeah, so to be clear, as I was about to say, my point here is not that America is worse than Africa when it comes to the standards of living for people. That would be a fairly idiotic point. The point here is that Candace Owens is desperately trying to whitewash everything happening in the States today, ignoring everything bad that happens with our own borders, and exaggerating or outright lying about other ethnic, historical, and racial groups to promote this American exceptionalism. And again, there is no point in acknowledging anything Candace Owens says here that is correct unless she's willing to tell the full side of the story.
That's the latest estimate. Other sources say there are more. Concepts, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States. Child soldiers.
Right. In the 1850 census, we had 4 million